The second migration to Abyssinia, Ethiopia. However, due to the news the Meccans heard about the good hospitality and warm welcome that the Muslims were accorded in Abyssinia, the polytheists got terribly annoyed and started to mete out severer and more horrible ill treatment and tortures to the Muslims. Thereupon Allah's Messenger ﷺ deemed it imperative to permit the helpless servants of Allah to seek asylum in Abyssinia, Ethiopia, for a second time. Migration this time was not as easy as it was the previous time, for the Quraysh were on the alert to the least suspicious moves of the Muslims. In due course, however, the Muslims managed their affairs too fast for the Qurayshites to spoil their attempt of escape. The group of emigrants this time comprised 83 men and 19, or in some versions 18 women. Whether or not Amr was included is still a matter of doubt. Quraysh machinations against the emigrants. The Quraysh could not tolerate the prospect of a secure and safe place available for the Muslims in Abyssinia, Ethiopia, so they dispatched 2 messengers to request their expulsion. They were Amr bin al-As and Abdullah bin Abi Rabi'ah before they embraced Islam. They had taken with them valuable gifts to the king and his clergy, and had been able to win some of their courtiers over to their side. The pagan messengers claimed that the Muslim refugees should be expelled from Abyssinia, Ethiopia, and handed over to them on the ground that they had abandoned the religion of their forefathers, and their leaders were preaching a religion different from theirs and from that of the king. The king summoned the Muslims to the court and asked them to explain the teachings of their religion. So they gathered together there, determined to speak the truth before him. He said to them, "What is this religion that has caused you to separate from your people? Do not enter my religion or any of these others." Ja'far bin Abi Talib anhu stood up and addressed the king in the following words. "O king, we were an ignorant people. We worshipped idols and ate the meat of dead carcasses. We were accustomed to lewd behavior, to severing the ties of kinship, neglecting our neighbors, and the strong among us consumed the weak. This is how we were. But then Allah sent a messenger to us. We were aware of his lineage, his truthfulness, that he was trustworthy and chaste. He began inviting us to Allah, that we single him out and that we worship him. So we left the religion of our forefathers that we had been previously following. We left the worship of stones and idols, of all others besides Allah. He also commanded us to be truthful in our speech, fulfill trusts, nurture the ties of kinship, be kind to our neighbor, and to refrain from spilling blood unlawfully. He forbade us from lewd behavior, from bad speech, from consuming the orphan's wealth, and from slandering chaste women. He commanded that we worship Allah alone without associating anything with him. He commanded us to perform the prayer, give charity, and fast. So he listed the Islamic injunctions. He continued, "So we trusted him and believed in him, and followed the religion of Allah that he delivered. We began to worship Allah alone. We would not associate anything with him, and we began prohibiting what he made unlawful for us, as well as allowing what he had made lawful for us. For this our people rose as enemies against us, punishing us, torturing us, to get us to leave our religion and return to worshipping idols instead of worshipping Allah. And they expected us to consider all of the filthy things lawful as we previously did. So when they overpowered us, oppressed us and restricted us, when they came between us and our religion, then we came to your land. We chose you over others besides you, desiring to be your neighbor, and hoping that you, O king, will not wrong us." The Negus said, "Is there any of this with you that he told you to be from Allah?" Ja'far anhu said, "Yes." The Negus said, "Then recite some of it for me." He then recited the opening verses of Surat Maryam, chapter 19, Mary, wherein is told the story of the birth of both John and Jesus Christ. down to the account of Mary having been fed with the food miraculously. Thereupon the king, along with the bishops of his kingdom, was moved to tears that rolled down his cheeks and even wet his beard. Here the Negus exclaimed, "It seems as if these words and those which were revealed to Jesus are the rays of the light which have radiated from the same source." Turning to the depressed messengers of Quraysh, he said, "I am afraid I cannot give you back these refugees. They are free to live and worship in my kingdom as they please." On the next day, the two messengers again went to the king and said that Muhammad ﷺ and his followers blasphemed Jesus Christ. Again, the Muslims were summoned and asked what they thought of Jesus. Ja'far anhu again stood up and replied, "We speak about Jesus as we have been taught by our Prophet ﷺ. That is, he is the servant of Allah, his messenger, his spirit and his word breathed into Virgin Mary." The king remarked that they believed the same. Then, turning to the frowning members of the delegation and to his bishops, who got angry, he mentioned that they may fret and fume as they like, but Jesus was nothing more than what Ja'far anhu has said about him. He then assured the Muslims of full protection. He returned to the delegation of Quraysh the gifts they had brought with them and sent them away. The Muslims lived in Abyssinia, undisturbed for a number of years, till they left for Medina. This is the version narrated by Ibn Ishaq, and others mention that Amr bin al-As went to the Negus after the Battle of Badr. To bring these two views in accord, others say that the delegation went on 2 occasions. However, the question and answer session between the Negus and Ja'far anhu that they say occurred on the 2nd occasion is the same in general content as that narrated here by Ibn Ishaq. From these questions, it is obvious that the event took place when they first arrived in Abyssinia. The tyrants' decision to kill the Prophet ﷺ. Now that all the schemes and conspiracies of the Quraysh had failed, they returned to their old practices of persecution and inflicting torture on the Muslims in a more serious and brutal manner than ever before. They also began to nurse the idea of killing the Prophet ﷺ. In the case of the Muslims, those who remained in Mecca were very few. Of these, they were either notables, thereby safe from annoyances, or they were neighbors of such people. Still, they had to hide their Islam and keep it out of the public eye as much as possible. Even in these circumstances, they were not safe from harm from their neighbors. As for Allah's Messenger ﷺ, he would pray and worship Allah openly before the eye of the tyrants, inviting publicly and quietly to Allah. There was nothing to prevent or divert him from that, for this was the essence of the order to convey the message of Allah when he said, "Therefore proclaim openly that which you are commanded, and turn away from al-mushrikun." Among what is mentioned in the books of Sunnah and Sirah about the events of this period is the incident with Utaybah bin Abi Lahab. He once approached the Prophet ﷺ and most rebelliously and shamelessly shouted at him, "I disbelieve in by the star when it goes down, and in who approached and came closer." In other words, I do not believe in any of the Quran. He then started to deal arrogantly with Muhammad ﷺ and laid a violent hand on him, tore his shirt and spat at him, but he missed the face of the Prophet ﷺ. Thereupon the Prophet ﷺ invoked Allah's wrath on Utaybah and supplicated, "O Allah, set one of your dogs on him." Allah responded positively to Muhammad's supplication, and it happened in the following manner. Once Utaybah, with some of his companions from Quraysh, set out for Syria and took accommodation in Az-Zarqa. There a lion approached the group to the great fear of Utaybah, who at once recalled Muhammad's words in supplication and said, "Woe to my brother! This lion will surely consume me,